Trembling fingers clutched the frayed edges of a faded quilt as the stagecoach rumbled over another rut in the dirt road, jostling its lone passenger. Tears threatened to fall from Tabitha Daughtry's eyes, but at 18 years old, she had long ago learned that crying solved nothing. The rolling hills of Arizona Territory stretched endlessly beyond the dusty window, the setting sun painting the landscape in hues of amber and gold as they approached the mining town of Oro Blanco. "Almost there, miss," the driver called down. "Oro Blanco just ahead." Tabitha clutched the small bundle of belongings tighter to her chest. Everything she owned in the world fit into one small carpetbag and the bundle on her lap. 3 days ago, she had been working at Whitcomb's orphanage in Tucson, where she'd lived since age 12, helping with the younger children. Now, she was property, sold to settle the orphanage's debts after Mr. Whitcomb had gambled away the quarterly funding. "You'll be going with Mr. Silas," Mrs. Whitcomb had told her yesterday morning, refusing to meet her eyes. "He's paid your indenture, 6 years of service to cover what we owe." "But I'm 18 now," Tabitha had protested. "You said I could leave, find work as a teacher's assistant." Mrs. Whitcomb had only shaken her head. "The papers were signed when you were still 17. It's legal." "I'm sorry, Tabitha." The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of a dusty hotel, interrupting her painful memories. Oro Blanco seemed to consist of one main street, lined with the usual assortment of frontier establishments: a general store, a saloon, the hotel, and what looked like a blacksmith shop at the far end. "Here's where I was told to drop you," the driver said, climbing down to open her door. "The Silver Dollar Saloon. Mr. Silas is expecting you." Tabitha's stomach knotted as she stepped down into the street. A saloon. Of course it would be a saloon. Her throat went dry at the implications. The batwing doors of the Silver Dollar swung open, and a heavy-set man with a greasy beard stepped out, his eyes roving over her appraisingly. "You the Whitcomb girl?" he asked, his voice rough as gravel. "Yes, sir. Tabitha Daughtry," he grunted. "Don't much care what your name is." "You'll answer to whatever I call you. Come on inside. Got folks waiting to see the new girl." Tabitha felt her cheeks burn. So this was to be her fate, displayed like livestock at an auction. She took a shaky step forward when a deep voice called out from behind her. "Hold up there, Silas." Tabitha turned to see a tall man dismounting from a chestnut stallion. Dust covered his clothes from the trail, but there was nothing road-worn about his bearing. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to handling himself in any situation. His dark hair was partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and his blue eyes seemed to take in everything at once. "This doesn't concern you, Evers," Silas sneered. "I believe it does." The stranger Evers approached, spurs jingling faintly with each step. He looked at Tabitha, and something in his expression softened momentarily. "Miss, I'm Jacob Evers, ranch owner outside of town." "She's my property, Evers, fair and legal," Silas snapped. "Got the papers right here." He waved a folded document. "How much?" Jacob Evers asked simply. "She ain't for sale." "Everything's for sale in Oro Blanco," Jacob replied evenly. "I'm asking your price." Silas narrowed his eyes. $200. "I'll give you 400. Tabitha gasped. $400 was a fortune in 1885, more than many men made in a year. Silas's eyes widened, greed immediately visible. "Cash." Jacob reached into his vest and pulled out a leather wallet. He counted out the bills slowly, deliberately. 400. Double what she cost you, I reckon." A small crowd had gathered to watch the exchange, murmuring among themselves. Silas licked his lips, snatched the money, and thrust the indenture papers at Jacob. "She's your problem now," Silas said, backing toward the saloon. "Hope she's worth it." Jacob didn't respond, simply folding the papers and tucking them inside his vest. He turned to Tabitha, his expression unreadable. "Miss Daughtry, I presume? Do you have belongings?" She nodded mutely, pointing to her small carpet-bag that the stagecoach driver had set in the dust. Jacob picked it up, surprised by its lightness. "Is this all?" "Yes, sir." He studied her face for a moment. "I'm not your owner, Miss Daughtry. I just bought your freedom." He held up the indenture papers, then deliberately tore them in half and then in quarters. "These have no power over you anymore." Tabitha stared at the torn papers fluttering in the breeze, unable to comprehend what was happening. "I don't understand." "You're free to go wherever you please," Jacob said, "though I'd advise against staying in Oro Blanco with Silas around. I'd be happy to give you passage to Tucson or Phoenix if you wish." Her head spun with the sudden change in circumstances. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Something dark passed behind his eyes. "Let's just say I know something about being owned. No person should belong to another." He glanced at the setting sun. "It's getting late. I have a ranch about 5 miles outside of town. There's a small cabin for the housekeeper, though she left last month to get married. You're welcome to stay there tonight and we can discuss your options in the morning." Tabitha hesitated. Going with another stranger seemed risky, but something in Jacob Evers' steady gaze reassured her. This man had just spent a small fortune to free her without asking anything in return. "Thank you, Mr. Evers. I accept your offer." Jacob nodded, then whistled for a boy loitering nearby. "Tommy, run to the general store and tell Mr. Peterson I'll be by tomorrow to settle my account. Then fetch my pack horse from the livery." "Yes, sir, Mr. Evers." The boy dashed off. Jacob turned back to Tabitha. "Do you ride, Miss Daughtry?" "Not well," she admitted. "You can ride with me then. My horse, Samson, is gentle enough." Soon they were heading out of town, Tabitha seated in front of Jacob on his stallion while the pack horse followed behind. She sat stiffly at first, uncomfortable with the proximity to a man she'd just met. But as the miles passed, exhaustion began to overtake her, and she found herself leaning back against his solid chest. "Rest if you need to," Jacob said quietly. "The trail's smooth from here." "Why did you really help me?" Tabitha asked, fighting to keep her eyes open. Jacob was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "My mother was indentured when she came to this country. The man who owned her contract worked her until she died when I was 10. I swore then that if I ever had the means, I'd never let that happen to anyone else." Tabitha felt tears prick her eyes at the simple honesty in his voice. "Thank you," she whispered. "Get some rest, Miss Daughtry. We'll be home soon." Home. Such a foreign concept. Tabitha let the rhythmic motion of the horse lull her into a light sleep, more peaceful than any she'd known in years. The Evers Ranch was larger than Tabitha had expected. In the deepening twilight, she could make out a sturdy main house, a large barn, several corrals, and what appeared to be bunkhouses for ranch hands. Jacob guided his horse toward a small cabin set apart from the main house by about 50 yards. "This is the housekeeper's cabin," Jacob explained as he helped her dismount. "It's simple but comfortable." He lit a lamp inside, revealing a tidy one-room cabin with a small stove, a narrow bed, a table with 2 chairs, and a rocking chair near the window. A curtained alcove likely contained a wash basin. "I'll have Maria from the main house bring you some supper," Jacob said, setting her carpet-bag on the table. "There should be clean linens in the trunk at the foot of the bed." Tabitha stood in the center of the small room, overwhelmed by the events of the day. "Mr. Evers, I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks needed. Get some rest, Miss Daughtry." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Breakfast is at 6 in the main house. If you're feeling up to it, you're welcome to join us. If not, I'll have something sent over." After he left, Tabitha sank onto the edge of the bed, fingering the quilt that covered it. For the first time in hours, she was alone with her thoughts. Freedom. She was free. The realization hit her fully, and the tears she'd been holding back all day finally spilled over. She wept quietly until a knock at the door startled her. A middle-aged Mexican woman stood there with a covered tray. "Señor Evers said to bring you dinner, señorita. I am Maria, the cook." "Thank you, Maria. I'm Tabitha." Maria set the tray on the table and revealed a plate of beans, beef, and tortillas with a slice of apple pie. "Eat, eat. You are too thin. Tomorrow come to kitchen. I feed you proper." Her kind eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "Thank you," Tabitha said again, suddenly ravenous at the sight of the food. After Maria left, Tabitha devoured the meal, then washed up using the basin behind the curtain. Clean nightclothes had been left for her, simple but of good quality. As she crawled into bed, exhaustion claimed her, and she slept deeply for the first time in weeks. Morning sunlight streamed through the small window, waking Tabitha. For a moment, she was disoriented. Then yesterday's events came rushing back. She dressed quickly in her cleanest dress, faded blue calico that had seen better days, and made her way toward the main house. The ranch was alive with activity. Cowboys moved between the barn and corrals. The smell of coffee and bacon filled the air, and someone was whistling a cheerful tune nearby. Tabitha hesitated at the back door of the main house until Maria spotted her. "Come, come. Breakfast almost ready." The kitchen was warm and inviting, with copper pots hanging from hooks and herbs drying from the rafters. A large table dominated the room where 3 men were already seated. Jacob stood when she entered. "Miss Daughtry, good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you." She hovered uncertainly until Jacob gestured to an empty chair. "Please join us. This is my foreman, Frank Wilkins, and my ranch hand, Pedro Vasquez." Both men nodded politely, though Tabitha could see curiosity in their eyes. Breakfast was a hearty affair of eggs, bacon, biscuits, and strong coffee. The men discussed ranch business while eating, and Tabitha listened quietly, trying to understand the workings of the place that had become her unexpected sanctuary. After breakfast, Jacob asked her to join him on the porch. The morning sun bathed the ranch in golden light, revealing its true scope. Rolling grasslands stretched toward distant mountains, dotted with cattle. Several cowboys were breaking horses in a nearby corral. "It's beautiful," Tabitha said softly. Jacob nodded. "My father started with nothing, built this place up acre by acre. When he died 5 years ago, I took over." He turned to face her. "Miss Daughtry, I meant what I said yesterday. You're free to go wherever you wish. I can arrange passage to Tucson or further if you'd like." Tabitha twisted her hands in her skirt. "The truth is, Mr. Evers, I have nowhere to go. The orphanage was the only home I knew, and now—" She swallowed hard. "I need work. I can cook, clean, so I'm good with children. I can read and write." Jacob considered her words. "As it happens, I do need a housekeeper. The position includes room and board plus $15 a month." Tabitha's eyes widened. It was a generous offer, more than double what many domestic workers earned. "I couldn't ask for so much," she protested. "You're not asking. I'm offering the going rate." His expression softened slightly. "No strings attached, Miss Daughtry. If the arrangement doesn't suit you, you're free to leave at any time." Tabitha studied his face, searching for any hint of deception, but found only straightforward honesty. "I accept, Mr. Evers, thank you." "Good. Maria will show you your duties. She manages the kitchen, but the rest of the house needs attention." He glanced toward the main house. "It's been somewhat neglected since my father passed." The first few days at the Evers Ranch established a comfortable routine for Tabitha. She rose early, had breakfast with the ranch hands, then set about cleaning and organizing the main house. It was a spacious dwelling, built of sturdy logs with a stone fireplace dominating the great room. 4 bedrooms, a study, dining room, and kitchen provided plenty to keep her busy. Jacob was often away during the day, seeing to ranch business, but they would often share supper in the evening, sometimes joined by Frank or other ranch hands. During these meals, Tabitha learned more about Jacob Evers. He was 30 years old, born in Texas to an Irish immigrant mother and a father who'd fought in the Mexican-American War. He'd never married, devoting himself instead to building the ranch into one of the most prosperous in the Arizona Territory. He was fair with his men, respected in town, and known for his unwavering sense of justice. The Apache call him man of his word, Pedro told her one evening as they washed dishes together. 3 years ago, when soldiers wanted to drive them from their hunting grounds, Senor Evers spoke for them at the territorial meeting. He honors the old agreements. This information didn't surprise Tabitha. In the short time she'd known Jacob, she'd recognized his innate integrity. It was evident in everything from how he treated his horses to the way he spoke to the youngest ranch hand, with the same respect he showed the town banker. As the weeks passed, Tabitha found herself watching for Jacob's return each evening. She took extra care with the meals when he was expected and found herself lingering over conversations with him. His quiet strength and thoughtfulness drew her, though she tried to remind herself that her position was precarious. She was his employee, nothing more. One evening in late May, a violent thunderstorm swept across the ranch. Tabitha had just finished clearing the supper dishes when the first crash of thunder shook the house. Rain lashed against the windows as the wind rose to a howl. "Going to be a rough night," Jacob commented, stoking the fire higher. "You should stay here rather than walk back to the cabin." "I'll be fine," Tabitha insisted, reaching for her shawl. Jacob crossed to the window. "I don't think so." He pulled back the curtain to reveal near horizontal rain and the occasional flash of lightning. "The guest room is made up. It's safer for you to stay." Before she could protest further, a particularly violent gust rattled the windows and Tabitha relented. "Perhaps you're right." They sat together in the great room as the storm raged outside. Jacob reading from a dog-eared copy of The Count of Monte Cristo, while Tabitha mended one of his shirts. The domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on her, and she found herself imagining other evenings like this, evenings that weren't born of necessity but choice. "You're quiet tonight," Jacob observed, looking up from his book. "Just thinking," she replied, focusing on her stitching. "About what?" Tabitha hesitated. "The future, I suppose. What might have happened if you hadn't been in Oro Blanco that day." Jacob set his book aside. "I wasn't supposed to be there. I had planned to ride to Tucson, but one of the horses threw a shoe. The delay put me in town just as your stagecoach arrived." Tabitha met his gaze. "Providence, perhaps. Perhaps." A log shifted in the fireplace, sending sparks up the chimney. "What were your plans before the indenture? You mentioned teaching." "Yes, I had hoped to become a teacher eventually. At the orphanage, I helped with the younger children's lessons." She smiled at the memory. "I loved watching them learn their letters, seeing their faces light up when they read their first word." "You'd make a fine teacher," Jacob said. "There's talk of building a proper schoolhouse in Oro Blanco now that more families are settling in the area." "Really? That would be wonderful." Their conversation drifted to books they'd read, places they'd like to see, and memories of childhood. Jacob spoke of his mother's stories of Ireland, a place of mist and magic he'd never seen but could picture clearly from her descriptions. Tabitha shared rare, happy moments from the orphanage Christmas pageants and summer picnics. As the evening wore on, Tabitha felt something shift between them. Jacob seemed to be seeing her not as his housekeeper, but as a woman with dreams and thoughts of her own. The way his eyes lingered on her face made her heart beat faster, and she found herself wondering what it would be like to be held by him. The storm began to abate around midnight, and they reluctantly parted to their separate rooms. Tabitha lay awake for a long time, listening to the rain's gentle patter against the roof and thinking of Jacob's blue eyes in the firelight. Summer progressed, bringing scorching days and the necessity of early morning work before the heat became unbearable. Tabitha settled more comfortably into life at the ranch, gradually making the main house truly homey with small touches wildflowers in mason jars, new curtains she sewed from fabric purchased in town, quilts aired and mended. Jacob noticed these changes, commenting on them with quiet appreciation. "The house hasn't felt this much like a home since my mother was alive," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold. Tabitha felt a flush of pleasure at his words. "I'm glad. A house should be more than just walls and a roof." "And what makes a home to you, Tabitha?" he asked, using her first name as he'd begun to do in their private conversations. She considered the question carefully. "People who care for each other. Safety. Knowing you belong somewhere, that you're missed when you're gone." Jacob nodded thoughtfully. "I've had the house and land, but I think the home part has been missing." Their eyes met, and Tabitha felt that same flutter in her chest that had become familiar whenever Jacob looked at her this way. There was something unspoken growing between them, something neither had acknowledged aloud. The moment was broken by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Jacob stood, hand automatically going to the revolver at his hip as he peered into the gathering dusk. "It's Frank," he said, relaxing. "Wonder what brings him back from town so late." The foreman rode up hard, dismounting before his horse had fully stopped. "Boss, we've got trouble. Silas Blackburn is making noise in town about the girl." Tabitha felt her blood run cold at the mention of the man who had purchased her indenture. "What kind of noise?" Jacob asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Says you stole what was rightfully his. He's been drinking at the Silver Dollar all afternoon, getting louder about it. Sheriff Tompkins sent me to warn you." Jacob's jaw tightened. "Silas took the money, the deal was fair." "Fair ain't always what matters to a man like Silas," Frank said grimly. "Especially when he's in his cups. Sheriff's worried he might ride out here with some of his boys." "Let him come," Jacob said, his hand resting on his holstered revolver. "This is my land." "Jacob," Tabitha said softly, laying a hand on his arm. "I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me." His expression softened as he looked down at her. "No one's going to hurt you, Tabitha, not while I draw breath." The conviction in his voice stirred something deep within her. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that her feelings for Jacob Evers had grown far beyond gratitude or friendship. Frank cleared his throat. "Sheriff suggests bringing Miss Daughtry into town tomorrow to make a formal statement about the transaction. Might settle things legal-like. He's also wired the territorial judge to clarify the status of the indenture papers." Jacob nodded. "We'll ride in tomorrow morning." After Frank left to inform the rest of the ranch hands to stay alert through the night, Jacob turned to Tabitha. "I won't let him take you. I know." She looked up at him, gathering her courage. "Jacob, these past months here, they've meant everything to me." He reached out slowly, as if afraid she might pull away, and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "They've meant everything to me too, Tabitha." His touch sent warmth spreading through her. "I've never felt like I belonged anywhere until I came here." Jacob took her hand in his. "I didn't know what was missing in my life until you stepped off that stagecoach." They stood there as the last light faded from the sky, hands clasped, the admission of their feelings hanging in the air between them. When Jacob finally bent his head to brush his lips against hers, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The kiss was gentle, tentative at first, then deepening as Tabitha responded. When they finally drew apart, she was breathless, her heart pounding like a wild thing in her chest. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," Jacob admitted, his voice husky. "I've wanted you to," she whispered back. A shout from one of the ranch hands broke the moment, a reminder of the potential danger. Jacob reluctantly stepped back. "You should stay in the main house tonight," he said, "just to be safe." Tabitha nodded, still feeling the press of his lips against hers. Whatever came tomorrow, something fundamental had changed between them tonight. The ride into Oro Blanco the next morning was tense. Jacob insisted on bringing 4 of his ranch hands as an escort, all of them armed. Tabitha wore her best dress, one Maria had helped her make from fabric Jacob had brought back from a trip to Tucson. With her hair neatly pinned up and wearing the small pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother, her only inheritance, she hoped to present a respectable appearance before the sheriff and townspeople. The town was busier than usual for a weekday morning. Word had obviously spread about the confrontation brewing between Jacob Evers and Silas Blackburn. Curious faces peered from shop windows as their small party rode down the main street. Sheriff Tompkins met them outside his office. "Morning, Jacob. Miss Daughtry." He nodded to each of them. "Glad you decided to come in. Hopefully we can get this sorted without any trouble." "Where's Silas?" Jacob asked, helping Tabitha down from her horse. "Sleeping off last night's whiskey, far as I know," the sheriff replied. "But he'll hear you're in town fast enough." Inside the sheriff's office, Tabitha gave her formal statement, explaining the circumstances of her indenture, Jacob's purchase of her contract, and his immediate freeing of her. The sheriff wrote it all down carefully. "And you're currently employed by Mr. Evers of your own free will?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Mr. Evers has been a perfect gentleman and pays me fair wages for my work as his housekeeper." The sheriff nodded. "That matches what Jacob told me. I've also received a wire back from Judge Parker. He confirms that the tearing up of indenture papers in front of witnesses constitutes a legal dissolution of the contract, especially given that Mr. Evers paid considerably more than the stated value." Relief flooded through Tabitha. "So Silas has no legal claim on me?" "None whatsoever," the sheriff confirmed. "You're a free woman, Miss Daughtry." The door to the sheriff's office banged open, revealing Silas Blackburn, his face flushed with either anger or the remnants of last night's drinking. "That's a load of horse manure," he snarled. "She was mine, fair and square." Jacob rose to his feet, positioning himself between Tabitha and Silas. "The law says otherwise, Silas. You took the money, the deal is done." "I was cheated," Silas protested. "That girl was worth more to me than $400. The implication in his words made Tabitha's skin crawl, and Jacob's expression darkened dangerously. "Careful, Blackburn," the sheriff warned. "You're admitting to intentions that wouldn't sit well with the territorial judge." Silas glanced around, seeming to realize he was outnumbered. His bloodshot eyes settled on Tabitha with such malice that she involuntarily shrank back. "This ain't over," he muttered, backing toward the door. "No one cheats Silas Blackburn." "It is over," Sheriff Tompkins said firmly. "The law's been satisfied. Miss Daughtry is free, and you've been paid double what you spent. I suggest you consider the matter closed unless you want to spend time in my jail for disturbing the peace." With a final venomous glance at Jacob and Tabitha, Silas stormed out. The sheriff sighed. "He'll bluster and complain, but I don't think he'll try anything. Silas is a bully, not a fool. He knows you've got too many men loyal to you, Jacob." Jacob nodded, but the tension didn't leave his shoulders. "We'll head back to the ranch now. Thank you for your help, Sheriff." As they prepared to leave town, Jacob suggested they stop at the general store to pick up supplies. While he spoke with the shopkeeper, Tabitha browsed the fabric section, thinking of curtains for the study that still needed updating. The bell above the door jingled, and Mrs. Peterson, the shopkeeper's wife, hurried in. "Oh, Miss Daughtry, I'm so glad you're here. I've been meaning to speak with you." "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson," Tabitha greeted her politely. "I'm on the town committee, you know," the older woman said, straightening her spectacles. "We've finally secured funding for our schoolhouse, and we're in desperate need of a teacher. Sheriff Tompkins mentioned you have experience with children's education." Tabitha's heart leaped at the opportunity. "Yes, I taught basic reading and arithmetic at Whitcomb's orphanage." "Would you consider the position? It would start next month when the building is completed. The salary is $40 a month, and there's a small apartment above the schoolroom for the teacher." It was a generous offer, far more than she made as Jacob's housekeeper. Teaching had always been her dream, yet the thought of leaving the ranch, of leaving Jacob, made her heart constrict painfully. I would need to think about it," she stammered. Mrs. Peterson patted her arm. "Of course, dear, it's a big decision. Just let us know within the week if you can." As they rode back to the ranch, Tabitha was unusually quiet, torn between the opportunity to fulfill her long-time ambition and her growing feelings for Jacob. "Something on your mind?" Jacob asked as they rode side by side, the ranch hands following at a discreet distance. Tabitha hesitated, then told him about Mrs. Peterson's offer. "It's what I always wanted," she concluded, watching his face carefully. Jacob was silent for a long moment. "You should take it," he finally said, though she thought she detected reluctance in his voice. "It's a good opportunity, and you'd be an excellent teacher." "It would mean leaving the ranch." "Leaving you," she said softly. Their horses walked closer together, and Jacob reached across to take her hand. "Tabitha, I would never stand in the way of your dreams, but I hope—" He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "I hope there might be a way for you to teach and still come home to the ranch each evening." Her heart quickened at his implication. "What are you saying, Jacob?" He reined his horse to a stop, prompting her to do the same. The ranch hands, sensing the private nature of their conversation, continued riding ahead. Jacob dismounted and helped Tabitha down from her horse. Standing together on the sun-dappled trail, he took both her hands in his. "I'm saying that I love you, Tabitha Daughtry. I think I've loved you since that first day in Oro Blanco when you stood so brave and dignified despite everything." His blue eyes held her steadily. "I'm asking if you might consider becoming my wife." Joy bubbled up inside her, so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "Jacob, are you certain?" "I have nothing to bring to a marriage, no family, no dowry." "You bring yourself," he said simply. "Your courage, your kindness, your spirit. That's worth more than all the land and cattle in Arizona territory." Tabitha reached up to touch his face, marveling that this man, this good, honorable man, could love her. "Then yes, Jacob Evers, I will marry you." His smile lit his entire face, and he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left her breathless. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "We could be married by the circuit preacher when he comes through next week. That would give you time to start teaching when the school opens. So I can do both. Teach and be your wife, of course. The ranch is only 5 miles from town, an easy ride. And perhaps," he hesitated, "perhaps someday you might want to teach our own children." The thought of having a family with Jacob children who would grow up loved and secure, never knowing the loneliness of an orphanage, filled her heart to overflowing. "I would like that very much," she whispered. They remounted and rode toward the ranch hand in hand, the future stretching before them bright with promise. The next week passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Word spread quickly about their engagement, and the entire ranch community embraced the news with enthusiasm. Maria insisted on making Tabitha a proper wedding dress, enlisting the help of several women from neighboring ranches. "A bride should be beautiful," she declared, measuring Tabitha for the gown. "Señor Jacob, he look at you like you hang the stars in the sky." Tabitha blushed. "I never expected to find love like this, especially not after what happened with the indenture." Maria smiled knowingly. "God works in mysterious ways, Nina. Sometimes the darkest roads lead to the brightest destinations." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and perfect. September in Arizona brought cooler temperatures, and wildflowers still dotted the grasslands surrounding the ranch. The ceremony would take place under the large cottonwood tree near the main house, followed by a celebration for the ranch hands, neighbors, and townspeople. As Maria and several other women helped Tabitha prepare, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the young woman looking back at her. The dress was simple but beautiful ivory cotton with delicate embroidery around the neckline and hem. Maria had woven wildflowers into her upswept hair, and the pearl earrings from her mother complemented the outfit perfectly. "You look like an angel," Maria said, wiping a tear from her eye. "Your parents would be so proud to see you today." Tabitha hugged the older woman. "Thank you for everything, Maria. You've been like a mother to me these past months." A knock at the door interrupted them. Frank, who would be walking Tabitha to her groom, waited outside. "Ready, Miss Tabitha?" he asked, offering his arm. Everyone's waiting, and Jacob looks about ready to wear a hole in the ground with his pacing. Tabitha laughed, her nervousness evaporating at the image. "I'm ready." As she walked toward the cottonwood tree where Jacob waited with the circuit preacher, Tabitha felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. The ranch hands had crafted an arch of twisted branches adorned with wildflowers, and beneath it stood the man who had not only saved her from a life of servitude, but had given her a future filled with love. Jacob's eyes never left her as she approached. When Frank placed her hand in his, she felt the slight tremble in his fingers that matched her own. "You are so beautiful," Jacob whispered before they turned to face the preacher. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows beneath the rustling cottonwood, promising to love and cherish each other for all their days. When Jacob slid a gold band onto her finger, one that had belonged to his mother, Tabitha felt the last pieces of her heart heal from the wounds of her orphan childhood. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Jacob pulled her gently into his arms, his kiss a promise of all the years stretching before them. The celebration lasted well into the evening with feasting, music, and dancing under lantern light. Sheriff Tompkins had come from town, along with many of the merchants and their families. Even Mrs. Peterson was there, assuring Tabitha that her position at the new school awaited her whenever she was ready. As the party continued around them, Jacob led Tabitha away from the crowd, toward a small rise that overlooked the entire ranch. In the moonlight, with the sounds of celebration drifting up from below, he took her in his arms again. "Happy Mrs. Evers?" he asked, the new name making her heart skip. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "When that stagecoach was bringing me to Oro Blanco, I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was just beginning." Jacob brushed a tender kiss against her forehead. "I plan to spend the rest of my days making sure you never regret saying yes to me." "That would be impossible," she assured him. "You gave me freedom when you tore up those indenture papers, but you've given me so much more since then. A home, a purpose, your heart." "And you've given me yours," he murmured against her hair. "The greatest gift I could ever receive." They remained there in each other's arms, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Arizona sky, the future spreading before them like the endless prairie full of promise, adventure, and most of all, love. 5 years later, Tabitha stood on the porch of the main house, watching as Jacob taught their 4-year-old son, Thomas, to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, played with wooden blocks at her feet, occasionally clapping when her brother managed to stay seated during a particularly bouncy trot. "Mama, look, I'm riding," Thomas called, his face alight with the same joy she'd seen countless times on his father's face. "I see you, sweetheart. You're doing wonderfully," she called back, her hand automatically moving to rest on her swelling belly. Their third child would arrive with the spring, another blessing in a life already overflowing with them. The ranch had prospered these past years, expanding to include more land and cattle. Jacob had built a new, larger schoolhouse in Oro Blanco when the original became too small for the growing number of children. Tabitha still taught 3 days a week, sharing the position now with another young woman from Tucson. They had never again seen Sela's Blackburn after that day in the sheriff's office. Word eventually reached them that he had left Arizona territory altogether after losing his saloon in a poker game, a fitting end, Tabitha thought, for a man who had tried to buy and sell human lives. Jacob finished the riding lesson and lifted Thomas from the pony, setting him on his shoulders as they walked back to the house. Little Elizabeth toddled down the steps to meet them, arms outstretched for her father to pick her up as well. "My arms are full of boy," Jacob teased her. "Where would I put a little girl? Here, Papa," Elizabeth insisted, pointing to his other shoulder. Laughing, Jacob managed to hoist her up as well, balancing both children as he approached Tabitha. "And what about my wife?" he asked, eyes twinkling. "Where shall I carry her?" Tabitha smiled, reaching out to touch his cheek. "Your heart carries me already, Jacob Evers. It has since the day you paid double to set me free." Jacob's expression softened with love. "Best investment I ever made," he said, leaning forward carefully with his precious cargo to kiss her. "And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." As the sun set over their ranch, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold, Tabitha knew that, despite all the hardship of her early years, she had found her true home not just in this place, but in the hearts of the family who surrounded her with love every day. From orphan girl to beloved wife, mother, and teacher, her journey had taken her from the depths of despair to heights of joy. She could never have imagined on that fateful day the stagecoach had rolled into Oro Blanco.